Back at WNST, folks, we have, at least in the early going, a lot of pesky fight in the 2018 Baltimore Orioles after what can only be considered a rough start, not only with the arms, but with the bats against the Twins, and then certainly down to Houston, Texas, awakened amidst the cold confines of Yankee Stadium and many, many opportunities, including bases loaded, nobody out in extra innings on Sunday. And somehow, they've survived. Alan McCallum is here. He is, as the song goes in Saturday Night Fever, staying alive as well. What a weekend against the Yankees, and now, to come home to, probably an empty stadium against the Blue Jays the next couple of days, then another roader to Fenway this weekend, a long road trip, and then to Detroit. A couple of days of home cooking. They showed me something over the weekend. It was a fun weekend of baseball in New York, Alan McCallum.
It really was. There's certainly, I would expect it to be full at Camden Yards the next few days. I think it's supposed to warm up on the weekend when they're heading back out on the road. But between it being really early and the beginning of the week and it being chilly outside for the next couple of days, I don't know if there'll be strong representation with the Orioles fans, but certainly after a debilitating first week minus opening day, to go into New York and survive the way they did, and that really was what they did, it was certainly a promising thing. I don't know what I would tell you about whether or not I think this team is really any good or not yet, but they certainly showed the fight that they've shown under Buck Showalter, with Adam Jones as leader for this organization on the field and as in the clubhouse. They brought that to New York this weekend, and it was. I got to tell you, in the last 4 games, I think I've seen I've seen things in the last 4 days between the Orioles and Yankees that I'm not sure I've ever seen before.
Oh, my God. The play at the plate in the 11th on Friday night, the walk-off by Alvarez, the defense by Gentry.
The play that the umpires got wrong where Caleb, who twice showed his mastery of the game, but the play where he ran, I think it was standing back to third base.
And Buck, I thought Buck was going to go Scanners. I really did.
And even on the Yankee broadcast, they had people come on and say Buck was right, and then on the MLB Network, the same thing. So, there are a lot of things happened this weekend, and for what the Orioles don't do well, there was a fundamental nature, and they're not as good defensively as they used to be, but there's a fundamental understanding of the game that really kind of saved them a couple of different times here during the course of the season. And then some showing up of players that haven't gotten an opportunity that really helped save them as well. And
Santander got involved. The latter-day Ryan Flaherty's are getting involved to some degree. How about the bullpen effort after Wright blowing up on Sunday, right?
Well, look, Tillman and Wright out there again, and it does scream of someone needs to tell Dan Duquette and the organization that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Tillman and Wright going to be a long flight, right? But they survived one of those 2 games. It's funny.
Well, they've also survived with their bats. You know what I mean? Like, when the bats can come to life, they can dig themselves out. Sure. They weren't doing that in Houston. They didn't do that against the Twins. Somehow they managed to beat Montgomery around pretty good, and the bats have awakened, but they're going to be station to station. They're going to be hard-pressed to win games by, eking out and trying to manufacture runs. That's not what they're going to do.
No, they're not going to manufacture runs. So there's a phenomenon, and I think if you look, particularly in the last couple of years, it becomes more and more pronounced. As I think we all know, this is a first ball, fastball, swing and miss team, and they play so many games in division with the unbalanced schedule. They sort of know most of the arsenal that the teams within the division are going to throw at them. They're familiar with them. You look at the record that they had on the road last year and out of division. This club just is not very good at adjusting to pitchers that they don't know. And, that is not a shock of a statement when you look at the fact that this team, and I've said it 1,000 times, they don't have good at bats. They are looking for the fastball so they can crush it. It's really surprising what happened on Sunday with Gentry. I think it was 11 pitches to get the game-winning hit, and that's an at bat you don't see most of the guys on this club have. 4 or 5
reminiscent of a
pitches.
Steve Pierce or something, isn't it? Kind of in some sort of weird way, right?
It's reminiscent of Nick Markakis. It's reminiscent of Matt Wieters. You look at the Yankees, and the Yankees since Derek Jeter, I mean, they have crazy at bats. The number of pitches that guys had to throw this weekend to get Yankee hitters out, even at the bottom of the order, where they did a lot of damage on Sunday against the Orioles. I mean, a lot of it was because eventually, after throwing 8, 9, 10 pitches, you sort of give in, and the guy is waiting to get the pitch he's looking to drive. And this club is not good at that. They hit mistakes. They don't work the count enough to force pitchers to make mistakes. Well, the couple of times that's happened this weekend, the Orioles got it done. The reason I bring up Nick Markakis and Matt Wieters and players of that ilk, in 14 and 12, along with all the sluggers, you had some guys who, even when they didn't get hits, they had good at-bats, they forced pitchers to work, and that not only helps them, it helps the lineup. Well, those players are gone, and Duquette has replaced them with more of the same, so when they're in a bad stretch, there's nobody that's going to make a pitcher work, or at least not very often. And to get situations, which largely, I've said to you, and I think it's true, Davis and Trouble in the lineup, I like this team much better without either one of them, frankly. And we saw a little bit of that today. It gives them, you get a few more guys in the lineup that are going to have some at-bats that make a difference, that are going to be effective. Right now, you look at Mancini, Machado when he's going well, but there aren't many other players in that lineup on a regular basis that are going to do that. Pedro Alvarez, and I've said this to you for 3 years now, he was the best RBI man on the club in 16 and barely got a chance to play because Trumbo started hitting home runs. He was the best player in the organization that was an RBI man in 17, and he spent most of the year in the minor leagues. And he's the best RBI man on that team now. I'm not telling you he's a great hitter, but what he does is work the count. He walks. He understands the strike zone in a way a lot of the other players do not. On Saturday, he ripped a double in the corner, and even they got him out on this late in the game, but he drove a ball to the opposite field after a pretty decent at-bat that got caught on a running grab towards the line. So, I mean, there are, with a few more faces in the lineup that are not the same guys that bring something else, you see the offense do something a little different, and I think that certainly helped them this weekend in New York.
He is Alan McCallum. He is Alan at WNST.net. If you want to find him, and the band will be back out on the road with E.M. Spencer sometime in 2018, we hope. And in the meantime, watching Oriole baseball and trying to assess night after night. First things first, the offense, everything you just said, I agree. We're all seeing the same thing, whether it's Chris Davis batting leadoff, and it looks like that experiment's gone away, and shame on Duquette and the organization for now yet again having another year without a leadoff hitter or anybody that gets on base, or searching for players of this ilk of any kind in the offseason instead of signing latter-day Trumbos and Alvarez's and whoever, Rasmus's and anybody else that's a dime a dozen.
Can you explain to me how it makes sense to them that Colby Rasmus was a better bet than a John Jay, who has experience leading off, who has been more productive, not a great player, but more productive in that position? I mean, you hear these things Buck says all the time, well, the leadoff hitter only bats leadoff once. You know who says that? Managers and general managers that don't have leadoff hitters.
Or managers or general managers who back Chris Davis as their leadoff hitter.
Because it's just nonsense. I mean, yes, in theory, there's a chance they're only going to bat leadoff once.
Dude, don't get in an argument with Luke about this, because the nerds have all gotten together and they've decided the lineups don't matter anymore. And they're probably right statistically.
I'm sorry, that's just nonsense.
Statistically, I'm supposed to hit on 16 in Vegas, and I've never won.
It's just simply nonsense. The leadoff hitter has more at-bats per capita than anybody else, and to have someone who is working the count, setting up other players, and doing their best to get on base to affect things matters. That matters. And right, the lineup doesn't matter anymore. It's just simply ludicrous.
Pretty good rap artist there, Ludacris. I thought you were going rock and roll with me there. Alan McCallum, it's all brought to you by our friends at Howard Bank, a relentless commitment to being the best at everything they do. They have branches throughout Baltimore now. The unique hands-on approach to banking. I got my hands on my Howard Bank mug here on our Facebook Live as well as our YouTube WNST TV channel. Every person at Howard Bank empowered to help you. See them at howardbank.com. They're also sponsoring our Thursday community and charity series. We'll have 4 more interviews coming up this Thursday morning. Big thanks to our friends at KC Cares, as well as the OJ Brigance and the Brigance Brigade folks who joined us, and Van Brooks as well, and Safe. You can hear all of them now up in the buyatoyota.com audio vault. Also brought to you by our friends at Cole Roofing. We all felt that March wind blowing in. If you have a commercial roof space, please get it checked out before the rain comes and the wet comes and the mess comes. Get it checked out. The wind causes damage. Cole Roofing can help you out. Also, Pfister Energy there to help you create a green space on your commercial roofing space. The morning newspaper delivers each and every morning at 7 a.m. directly to your email inbox. It's all digital. It's awesome. It's free. It's all powered up by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com. $10 a month anywhere in the world. You can find that all over the country now, and in your neighborhood. It's planetfitness.com and Planet of Triumphs to get you some inspiration as well. Our morning newspaper delivers with the Maryland Jockey Club entries for the weekend. They're racing in Laurel. I'm going to be going down for the Kentucky Derby Day. My wife's picking out a hat as we speak, and I'm looking for a jacket. We're getting ready for Preakness and the Pink and the Black-Eyed Susan at Hi-Ho Pimlico. All the entries now in the morning newspaper as well as on the front page of WNST.net. We'll be getting you ready for Justify and the Derby, and I'll be chasing down Bob Baffert before the month is over. But meantime, Caps hockey. We've got the Masters over with. We got the NBA playoffs start, and we got the NFL schedule coming next week. We got the NFL draft coming in a couple of weeks, and the Orioles at least have proven themselves resilient this weekend, if not relevant. Alan McCallum, our guest here, as always, talking Oriole baseball. I guess signs of life and things to like. Bundy, obviously every time he pitches every 5th day, that's going to be a good vibe. Dude, I don't know where we are with the rest of this. I believe Cashner's a big league pitcher. I know we're going to see a heavy dose of Cobb here, now and moving forward. And I don't know where Tillman and Wright, it better get better than what we've gotten. That's all I'm going to say.
Well, one of them's going to be gone, and I would bet it's going to be Mike Wright. I think you can sort of see what's happening. They don't want to lose a pitcher without giving it one last shot. He was out of options, so he makes the team trying to get going early. And if he flames out, and it certainly looks like that will probably be the case, they let him go knowing that they gave him every shot he could have over the last few years. I understand that. The problem was that given the way they started out, having Tillman and Wright at the back of the rotation when the team's not hitting, and for the first week nobody can pitch well except for Dylan Bundy, really emphasized how much he was struggling. But that Alex Cobb's going to join the rotation shortly, and at that point one of them's going to go. I would bet that it's going to be Wright. I think they're going to give Tillman a couple more opportunities. But if I was never worried about Cashner. You worry a little bit about Gosman. He looked good in his last start, but he can't get off to the same kind of start he did last year. The only thing that I'm worried about with Bundy is that as they get onto the regular every 5th day, that he can hold up with that. I certainly hope that's the case. So at this point,
well, they need some 3-4 nights where they're not going to have to go to the bullpen in the 3rd inning, or have no chance of that. I mean, subbing Cobb in for Wright just based on where we are right now, knowing there was going to be no Cobb without $53 million of daddy's money that Brady Angelos and John Angelos are spending, the difference we're going to see between Cobb and Mike Wright, I have a feeling it's going to be substantial, Alan. I really do. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not bullish on Cobb, but I believe Cobb's a major league pitcher. And I believe Cobb's going to look a whole lot more like Bundy than like Mike Wright or Jimenez or Tillman. And I believe that right away. Now, I don't know that he's going to go 109 pitches. I mean, I see Cobb as a 4 or 5 inning pitcher for the next 3 weeks, but that's just my vision of this.
Well, I mean, he's basically just coming out of, he's probably going to be about 3/4 of the way through spring training, right, when he gets up here. So, I mean, yeah, he's not going to be throwing shutouts at this point. I mean, I don't know if that's the pitcher he is, certainly not pitching at Camden Yards against the AL East, but he's going to give them a chance. What we believe is that he's going to give them a chance to win, which is what Tillman and Wright are not doing. I mean, the spin that was being put on Tillman's start yesterday, like, oh, well, you had a good start. He pitched 2 or 3 innings okay, and then he got knocked around. I mean, even when Tillman was at his best, he always had more foul balls than anybody else. He couldn't just get guys off his pitches. And at this point in his career, whether he's healthy or injured, I would assume that he's got to be relatively healthy. He's lost something, and now those pitches that were getting fouled off, and he would eventually get somebody out, but he'd have to throw a lot of pitches to do it. Now they're just tagging him. I mean, I understood the risk of 1 year. He'd done a lot for the organization. You're hoping to see what he gets back, but he was always teetering on the edge, and he's lost a little bit of that edge. And here we are again, 2 starts in. It's 2 starts. He's got an ERA of 8, over 8, and that's where he was last year.
And you or I would have predicted that, right? I mean, you would have said to me, what are his first 2 starts going to look like? My over-under would have been 6. I was not optimistic based on nothing. I mean, I don't know what they're basing any of this on. I mean, his arm slot's wrong. I mean, I don't know anything, but I know that.
Well, it just even this whole thing about, well, they don't like to show their starting pitchers to the division in spring training. Well, is this these hitters have never seen these guys before? I mean, and not only that, yeah, maybe you don't want the hitters to gauge them, but you also want to really see where they are. Pitching against minor leaguers on the back field in spring training doesn't necessarily tell you. Now, I'm not saying that spring training matters or that the numbers say anything, but people that know the game, and Buck and his crew certainly do, can measure what a pitcher looks like based on what kind of swings a hitter's taking against them. And I think that it would have given them a better feel for where Tillman actually was to throw him against real competition. That said, he's here. They're going to give him an opportunity until they simply can't anymore, particularly if he's the 5th starter and Cobb is going well and Bundy's going well and Cashner's giving them representative outings, and Gausman is looking like what we think he can look like most of the time, then there's a little more room to give Tillman time to find his way. But when Cashner gets hit around his first start and Gausman looks awful,
and you're playing 14 innings.
Right, and when those things happen, you can't afford to have a guy flame out in the 3rd or 4th inning on back-to-back days. You just can't do it. So the story will look different, much differently over the next few weeks if Cobb comes up and they settle this rotation, and the team who currently leads the league in strikeouts and even after a couple of days of putting up some runs are still in the lower level of run scoring in the American League so far. If those things get going, then it'll look differently. But right now, what you're worried about is a bullpen with 2 Rule 5 guys in it who have looked good at times, but certainly not every time they've been out, obviously. Certainly not against the Houston Astros. I mean, you can't afford to blow out your bullpen at the end of April. And the way they're going right now, I mean, they won 3 of the 4 games in New York, and certainly a couple of them in miraculous fashion. But the long-term story is we need to protect this bullpen, because if we have any hope of getting where we're hoping to get to, we can't completely reinvent it through the course of the season. They need to protect these guys.
He is Alan McCallum, and together we are trying to save Nestor Cortez Jr., are we not, Alan?
And Araujo and Darren O'Day and Brad Brock, who, quite frankly, I'm not. he doesn't impress me as a closer. I think that if he gets back into those late inning situations, he'll be better. But 30 pitch ninth innings or extra inning saves are not the way to keep his arm going. So there are a lot of players, but yes, certainly your namesake is one of the guys you want to have protected as we go through the season.
No, I wish I were a Rule 5 guy and could just stink and get by on the edges and the fringes, but...
Can you explain to me, I mean...
No.
We've taken...
No, I can't. I mean, does it pertain to the... No, Orioles? No, I can't explain anything. I've been trying to do that for 27 years.
Under Duquette, they've taken, what? Somewhere between 10 and 15 Rule 5 guys and tried to say...
Yeah, Luke's done the math on this, and the math is not... I mean, from an opportunity cost standpoint unless you're getting Mickey Mantle out of this thing or the next latter day, I guess everybody's chasing Johan Santana, right? Or in the Orioles case, I guess they're chasing Jay Gibbons, right?
I mean, and the most successful of them is Ryan Flaherty in the sense that he handled a utility position defensively fairly well.
And the left-handed guy that halfway stunk most of the time, right?
TJ McFarland?
Right.
I would not count him as a win. Maybe Santander is something, but I mean, you look at the Houston Astros. I mean, and they have one Rule 5 guy, and he can play every position expertly. He's a switch hitter and led the team in RBIs last year. I mean, how does that happen? I mean, you would think you would strike on a player like that at least once with the number of guys that they've taken, that at least one of them would have turned out to be that player, and they have not. That has not happened for the Orioles. So I mean, it does make you scratch your head a little bit.
Nestor Cortez Jr. Save Nestor. Nestor of eBay. All right, yeah. It's all brought to you by Royal Farms. Real fresh, real fast. Download the app. Use the app. Save the money. Get the points. Get the free fried chicken, the Western fries, the Rofo coffee, the Kona blend, all that good stuff. Use that Royal Farms app. Do what Justin Tucker tells you, even not in football season. Also brought to you by our friends at Pizza John's. My mom's favorite pizza, my favorite pizza. Every time I share the little pepperonis and my cheesesteak pursuits, I'm going to get a meatball sub down there one day. Make all of you real hungry. Pizza John's, I'm going to be having some dinner down there sometime very soon. I'll be telling some stories later on this week. So I'm trying to do some Caps viewing parties. Like, would people come out and watch a Caps game with me and share some pizza with their family? I hope so. I'm thinking maybe I might do that. It's all also brought to you by our friends at King Discount Liquors, Lottery Beer, Booze, and the best prices in Baltimore. Go to Rosedale and give the King a ring. I love his new television commercial with Johnny Bev. It's the best commercial he's done that I'm not in. So if you see Paul, tell him you saw him on Facebook. He'll know that's a lie. He'll know I sent you in. Alan is here. We are discussing all things Orioles. I want to go back to something you talked about at the very beginning, and then I'll let you talk about Ohtani or anything else that's fun. But you mentioned defense, and Luke and I had a little cat fight last week on the backside of Houston. It wasn't anything in particular. It was just in a very general sense of what Beckham is at third base, what Hardy was at shortstop, what Wieters used to be behind the plate, what Adam Jones used to represent in center field, what Buck used to stand for, where Chris Davis was 5 years ago as a first baseman. All of the above, right? Just where Markakis was as a right fielder. Sure. What they used to be and what they are defensively is different. Now, Gentry saved the game. Joseph's a heads-up all play. I mean, all the things you said earlier, I'll give you, but their defense over the haul, over 162, and I know Adam Jones lost the ball in the sunshine, whatever, and Davis kicked the ball around the other day. Beckham's kicked the ball around once already. Their defense isn't going to be as good. It's not going to bail them out, but it deodorized the Yankees weekend. A lot of things went right with their defense over the weekend. A lot of heads-up ball.
So the Yankees' defense is not particularly spectacular right now, and the Orioles are probably better than them, but they're a far cry from what they used to be. Of the positions you mentioned, I would say that the position they have lost the least in is catcher when Caleb's behind the plate. Caleb can handle a pitching staff, and I really enjoy watching him catch the Orioles. And again, just the heads up plays that he's made. I mean, those are not physical things; those are mental things. Knowing the game. Tim Beckham Tim Beckham's okay at third base. He's not Manny Machado, and you wouldn't even think twice about it if you hadn't seen Manny Machado play third base the way he has since 2012. Because you'd be comparing him to, I don't know, Melvin Mora, who was a good third baseman, but not Manny Machado, and Craig Worthington, and Leo Gomez, and all of the and Todd Zeile, and all the guys that have played third base for the Orioles that were not named Brooks Robinson and Manny Machado. But we're coming off one of the best defensive players at that position I've ever seen, and that you see the difference. Manny Machado early on has made some nice plays at short, and he's made some. Here's the biggest thing about Manny at short is that at third base his clock was spectacular. They talk about the clock, knowing how fast runners are going, what you need to do, and at shortstop I have not seen what I believe to be that perfect sort of sense of timing that he had at third base. I think Manny's going to be able to handle position, but he's not J.J. Hardy, and he's certainly not what he was at third base. And I got to tell you, the scenario that gets Manny Machado to stay in Baltimore is simply this. The teams that wanted Manny want him at third base, and they want those numbers and that defense at third base. And he's saying, I'm not playing third base again, I'm a shortstop. Well, why am I going to pay that kind of money for a guy who's maybe above average? He's average right now. Maybe he'll be above average shortstop, but isn't what he is at third base. Plus, you saw what happened in this market in the last over the winter, and whether the money will be there for him, not at third base, will be a very interesting thing. So suddenly, there is a scenario in my head where Manny comes back to Baltimore because the Orioles will say, we'll let you play shortstop. We'll pay you a lot of money, not all that money, but you want to be a shortstop? Come be it in Baltimore. That's the scenario that gets him in Baltimore, but it doesn't get him a gold glove at shortstop. I think Jonathan Scope is still an outstanding second baseman. We'll see where we are as we go through the season. Chris Davis, 2 years ago, I thought got robbed of a gold glove at first base. I thought he deserved it. I don't know whether, Chris Davis is a guy lost on an island like Robinson Crusoe looking for someone to help him right now.
Oh, it's wayward, and there's so much distance between here and the other $100 million they're going to have to pay him, right? Literally.
Yeah, I know. Before I was saying, even with his offensive struggles, he still plays great.
This is making the Albert Bell deal look like a bargain. And if Angelos Angelos is no longer deciding things with the team, but if he had an insurance policy here, he might be calling Chris saying, "Doesn't something hurt? Don't you feel something degenerating right now?"
Chris Davis, he's not. And again, it's cold. Guys haven't gotten in their rhythm yet. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt, but he does not look like the same defensive first baseman he was 2 seasons ago. The play today, against the Yankees, where Adam Jones lost the ball in the sun. That happens. That doesn't worry me. The plays in Houston, where the balls were hitting to the gap and Adam couldn't catch up to them, those plays worried me.
He looks a few years older in the outfield. There's no doubt about that. We've seen that happen now.
He looks like he should be playing left field at Camden Yards, where I believe you need a second center fielder, not Nelson Cruz, not even Trey Mancini.
Well, we go back to Brady Anderson playing left field, Mike Devereaux playing center, and we've had that debate for 25 years, and right. I think we're all in agreement that this ballpark's a little different for left field. I agree.
No question.
You wouldn't want Don Baylor out there not being able to throw the ball.
And at this point, where I would like to see the Orioles re-sign Adam Jones. I think that he'd be. Whether they tear this whole thing apart or not, I think Adam is good for this club for a lot of reasons. But he should. But you can see that it's about time to start figuring out how to move him. He doesn't need to move to right field, which plays really short at Camden Yards. His arm would play better there. Would play well there, but they need a guy who can run a little bit, and I think left field's probably the right thing for him. And at that point, you're praying that Cedric Mullins becomes the player that they've been touting him as, and that he can take over center field, or if not him, Austin Hayes. I don't know. We'll see. And here's the thing, and I've been complaining about this since 2014. I will continue to harp on it. You watch the plays that happened in Houston, and even some that happened in New York. The Orioles continue to bunch their corner outfielders to the gaps. And their argument is that they're taking away doubles. But what they're giving up down the lines hurts them over and over and over again. Balls that should be singles that drop in become doubles. Guys that should be at third base running from first to third can go home because of the distance they have to run. And it happens over and over and over again. And this is clearly a buck choice. And it makes no sense. Even when Adam Jones could handle center field well, they were doing that. And at that point, that shows lack of confidence in your center fielder. It says that that's the defense you play when you have a starting rotation like the Nationals or the Mets or the Braves of the late 90s, where they're going to put the ball on the plate every time, where Greg Maddux knew what a hitter was going to do 3 hitters before he got to him. And I got news for the Orioles. They don't have that pitching staff. They didn't have it in 14. They didn't have it in 16. They sure as heck didn't have it in 17, and they don't have it now. And to be in a situation where you have guys that are questionable on the corners to start with, and they have to run 1,000 miles to get balls that get blooped in, it doesn't make any sense. And it also speaks of the thought that, well, everybody plays like we do, where they swing for the fences, and every time they face a club that has long at-bats, are trying to put the ball in play, and are not afraid to hit the ball the other way, they suffer from this. It exacerbates a situation with their defense that already exists and points out what their deficiencies. What the Orioles do well, and I said this earlier, is that when they have fundamental plays, they execute them. And that still puts them ahead of most of the teams in baseball. I don't know how much baseball you've watched, Nestor. There aren't a lot of good teams in baseball right now. There just aren't.
Oh, there are a lot of bad teams. There are several good teams. I mean, I think there are 6 or 8 really good teams. There are 10 or 12 really bad teams. I agree with you on that.
And that I had a good friend of mine who I've known for a long time post something that says, am I nuts when I was saying the Orioles have an opportunity to sneak into the second wild card spot with the addition of Cashner and Cobb. And, for all of their weaknesses, the truth is they have more talent than probably half the clubs in baseball.
I watched the Padres the other night. I was up late watching them in those goofy blue uniforms they're in, and I'm thinking, woo, man, going to be a long campaign in San Diego, right?
But they have young talent that could be good in a couple of years. I mean,
but a lot of teams think that. The White Sox think. I mean, there's a bunch of teams that are going to stink this year that think they have young talent. The Orioles, you could say that about Mancini. I mean, Scope, right? I mean, that's what's left of young talent here, right?
Right. I mean, this club a few years ago was one of the best young clubs in baseball, and now they're not young anymore. They're a veteran club. Cisco, Mancini, maybe Santander, you look at and say, well, these are young guys that you put the future on.
By the way, you buying what Cisco's selling?
I think Cisco's going to hit.
Really? You think he's going to be in the big leagues 5 years from now?
I think Cisco's going to hit, okay? I think he's going to hit, particularly at the catcher position, he'll hit enough. What I don't know is whether or not he can actually catch. And if you have to move his bat to first base or the DH, first you have to get Chris Davis off first base. But I mean, his bat may not play at first base, certainly not at DH, the way it might at catcher. So the answer to your question of whether he'll be in the big leagues 5 years from now is, will he exceed the expectations for his bat? If he does, it doesn't matter where he plays, whether he's a catcher or not. But if his bat is what it looks like it could be, he needs to catch and put up the numbers 280, 300, 15 home runs at the catcher position, and then he'll be a very valuable player. So, I mean, there are stipulations on my answer because of the position that he plays. He has to hit enough. He has to be defensively sound enough for his bat to have the opportunity to develop at the major league level. I mean, I believe in Mancini. He's one of the few guys in this club that consistently goes out to try to get and puts a good at bat in play most of the time. I haven't seen enough of Anthony Santander, but I have seen that the ball jumps off his bat. He looks fundamentally sound at the plate to me. So I mean, those are good building blocks. He doesn't look like he's got feet of stone playing the outfield. He's a guy that has more growing to do, and I can see why the Orioles want to keep him. I can see why they want to keep him more than almost any of the other Rule 5 guys they've had. And by comparison to Colby Rasmus, I mean, he's freaking Roberto Clemente. So, I mean, I'm happy to have him out there right now, trying to play the position. Certainly got a couple of big hits for the Orioles on Sunday when they played the Yankees. So, yeah, I mean, and then the question is, how much talent do they have on the farm? Do you buy the young guys? And the answer is, I don't know, because I haven't seen them enough. The Mountcastles and the Austin Hayes and the Cedric Mullins. I mean, I've heard good things, but I haven't.
Yeah, but they're giving the at-bats to Pedro Alvarez and Colby Rasmus right now, right? That's where they are.
I think Pedro Alvarez should be playing.
Dude, they got enough guys running around here from San Andrew to Cortez to Raul. I mean, by the time we learn how to pronounce their names, they're going to be gone. But, I mean, you know, they've already got, 14% of their roster wrapped up in Rule 5 guys or something, right?
So they're trying to serve two masters, right? I mean, they're trying to, if you say they're trying to look at the young
well, they're looking at everybody else's prospects for now. They'll look at their own later, I guess, right?
And while trying to win, and which returns me to the original statement of the offseason in last July when I said they needed to blow this thing up. But that's not where they are right now. So they're trying to win. And the question is, how do you accomplish that? But, I mean, just to get back to the conversation, I mean, defensively, I believe that they are still relatively fundamentally sound. But the stellar defense you got in 14 when J.J. Hardy was at short and Manny Machado was at third, and that was the first year for Jonathan Scope, who looked really good at second base, still does. You know, Chris Davis at first. Nick Markakis is still in the outfield, and while he might have been beginning to lose a step, was still a very competent defensive right fielder in the major leagues. Matt Wieters was gone for most of that year, but you had two really capable catchers that anchored that catching staff to the point where we talked a lot on the radio about whether or not Matt Wieters not being there was part of the formula for the Orioles having the kind of season they had and having the kind of pitching staff they had. So, I mean, that was, aside from Nelson Cruz playing left field a lot in 14, I mean, that was one of the best defensive clubs you'd ever seen. If you want to go back to 2012 when you had Nate McCallum playing a lot in left field, and then you're talking about McCallum, Jones, and Markakis, Hardy, Machado, and Davis. The only real void at that point was second base. I mean, they didn't have Jonathan Scope at that point. That was spectacular. I mean, you're talking about a couple of absolutely spectacular defensive
Well,
clubs.
that helped their pitching as well. I mean, you know,
absolutely.
You know, an out or two a game here and again. It always works. He's Alan McCallum, Alan at WNST.net. It's all brought to you by our friends at Fremont Mortgage. Don't make a 30-year mistake by choosing the wrong lender. You need the right lender. Carl Delmont and the champion Celtic team. We'll get Carl on here a little later on in the week, talk a little soccer with him, getting ready for the World Cup as well. Fremont Mortgage is there online. Go to Fremont.com. They also sponsor all of our swabbings on behalf of the Bowmare Registry, and there goes my hero. I have played the Barry Trotz interview from Michael's Cafe in Timonium. That's up in the buyatoyota.com audio vault as well if you want to go give that a listen to get ready for playoff hockey, amongst other things. Last thing, Alan, and I don't want to linger too much longer here, but Ohtani-san, yes, right? He's got WA, correct?
It takes me back to 2 years ago with Hyun-Soo Kim, who couldn't hit a lick in spring training.
He stunk. I mean, they wanted to run him out of Sarasota. They were trying to give him away, right? Like, literally trying to get rid of him so they didn't have to bring him north.
And he got to the big leagues, and all he did was have the best, was the best hitter on the club
Most nights.
On most nights. And Ohtani looked awful both on the mound and at the plate in spring training, and has turned it on here. Now, I mean, it's early, and the league will adjust, and he'll have to do that. So, I mean, is he going to hit 100 home runs and hit 400 and have an ERA of 1? Probably not. But I think what baseball is excited about is the level of acumen he has. The power is impressive. I mean, he's got a pretty easy swing. You take what Ichiro is and you add the component of power to it. And that's a really tantalizing idea. And then just a two-way player. I mean, you think about how many spots you could save on a roster, how much flexibility you have if you have guys that can both hit and pitch competently, not even brilliantly, but competently. There's so much you can do with a roster. So, I mean, I think there are a lot of things to be excited about. I can't wait to see how he handles through the season.
Well, we'll get him right at the halfway point. June 29th, 30th, and July 1st, they're in town. They're giving away Hawaiian shirts. I mean, what a night that's going to be, huh? Wow, right?
Being an insomniac is a useful thing for me because I get to watch a little more West Coast action because I'm awake. But, yeah, he'll be here in June. That's fine. We'll know a lot about the Orioles at that point. But it's going to be exciting to watch his development. I would like to see him pitch more than. Do they have a 7-man rotation? 6 or 7-man rotation. I'd love to see him every 5th day. That apparently isn't how they're going to go.
Yeah, we go to the 3-man rotation around here. We're going to win a lot of ball games.
But yeah, right. But I got to tell you, I mean, you add Trout, Justin Upton, even the shadow of the player that Pujols once was. If he can put up 25 and 80 or 90 RBIs, which he still seems capable of doing. And then Ohtani, I mean, at that suddenly you've got a team, maybe not a lot of mobility, but a team that should be able to put up some runs. There's no question about that. And a really exciting club to watch with arguably the two most exciting players in the game, with Trout and Ohtani in the same lineup. So, I mean, there's certainly a lot to be excited about watching him play. All
right, Blue Jays at home all week, off to Fenway for a long weekend, including the crazy Monday morning game a week from now. You can find Alan McCallum, Alan at WNST.net. He appears from time to time with us here on the radio, as well as out on the BuyAToyota.com audio vault. We're also broadcasting live on our Facebook Live as well as our YouTube live channel. You can find me anytime, anywhere the internet travels, but the BuyAToyota.com audio vault is my favorite place to hang out. Everything that you miss, you can find there anytime. It's no static at all. It's like FM. It's like Steely Dan. It's like the Modell Lyric having Steely Dan come in, which is going to happen later on in the fall. Our new partner at the Modell Lyric will be telling you more about that. The Wild Kratts coming up this week. You can learn more at Modell-Lyric.com, but we'll be talking partnership with them as well. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.